Greetings to friends around the world. My name's Tim. I bring greetings today from your friends here in Spain and in North Africa. We're living in strange times, aren't we? Difficult days. I'm speaking to you from my back garden. I'm very grateful for a garden at this time because for the last 17 days we've been confined to home. We're not allowed out here in Spain. These are difficult days. And as I think about this, I remember back to a situation 3 years ago. With two close friends, I went for a walk. It was, I think, the 5th or the 6th of January. It was the early year, and we went up one of the mountains. It was a 2,000 metre high peak called La Maroma, about an hour's drive away from where I live. We got to the top of this peak. It was a 4-hour walk. It was late afternoon. We were spending the night up there. And it was a beautiful night. We watched the sun setting way off in the west. And as we looked west, the clarity of light was unbelievable. We could see so far. We could dimly in the distance, we could see the outline of the Rock of Gibraltar, 200 kilometres away. Looking south and southwest across the Mediterranean, we could see the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. We could see so far. And as we sat there, just drinking in this beauty, we processed a little bit the year that had gone past, 2016. I remember I had been going through quite some difficult situations at the time in our region. We were going through a major crisis, and I talked about it with my two friends, and we prayed for each other, and we brought a sense of closure to the year. It was interesting that even after that very hard year, as I looked back at the year, I had a kind of a sense of perspective. I could see places where God had very clearly been with me. We went to sleep that night. It was a cold night. There was snow around us. I was huddled up in my warm down bag inside a bivvy bag. And when we woke in the morning, we found a very different scene. Thick, heavy cloud had descended on the mountain in the night. And we woke to probably 20 or 30 metre visibility. We sat in the same spot where we had sat the night before. And that morning we talked about our plans for the year ahead. We talked about 2017 and we prayed for each other as we started out on this new year. As I sat there and reflected, it seemed very striking and quite prophetic that the previous night we had been looking back at the year and I'd been able to see 200 kilometres. I could see clearly looking backwards. In the morning, as I was thinking about the year ahead, I could see nothing. My visibility was virtually zero. And as I sat there praying, the phrase in Joshua came into my mind where God speaks to Joshua when they're just about to cross the Jordan and he tells them to follow the Ark of the Covenant. And he says, "You have not been this way before." And as I walked down the mountain, it was quite disconcerting to be in thick cloud, not to be able to see the way ahead, to be stumbling and slipping on damp rock. You have not been this way before. The phrase was ringing in my mind. I felt challenged. I need to be following closely after the ark. The ark, a picture of God's presence. And I was reminded as well of God's promise to Moses. My presence will go with you and I will give you rest. In my background, I was a history teacher. I love history. I love looking back. I love looking back at the past. One of my favourite stories in the Bible is the story of Samuel in 1 Samuel 4-7. Samuel lived at a time when the Philistines were attacking Israel. He was a boy in 1 Samuel chapter 4 when there was a huge battle. And the Philistines defeated the Israelites. The Israelites foolishly took the Ark of the Covenant into battle with them, treating it, I guess, like a lucky charm, thinking that God would be with them if the Ark was with them. But they lost a battle. The Ark was captured. The sons of the high priest died in battle. And when Eli the high priest heard the story, he fell over dead. That day, his grandson was born and his mother died giving birth. And the grandson was called Ichabod. The glory has departed. And that was the low point, probably until then, in Israel's history. The ark stolen, the people far from God. And Samuel grew up in that context. We read that the ark was returned in due course by the Philistines who couldn't keep it. And then after 20 years had passed, there was something of a revival, a turning back to God in Israel. The people were repenting, and they came to Samuel, and Samuel called them together. And as a nation, they were turning back to God. But on that day, the Philistines heard that they had assembled, and so the Philistines brought together a large army and they attacked them. And there was another major emergency. And the people said to Samuel, call out to God. And Samuel cried out to God on the people's behalf, and God heard. And he thundered against the Philistines, and he brought a huge victory for the Israelites that day. And after the battle, Samuel, we're told, gathered some stones together, and he built a pillar as a memorial to that great victory that God had given them. And it tells us that he called the pillar Ebenezer, which means stone of help. Or alternatively, up to this point, God has helped us. Ebenezer, a memorial for future generations that at this point in time, God Almighty had acted on behalf of the nation and had saved them. God had been their helper. A number of years ago, I read the wonderful biography of Hudson Taylor. Hudson Taylor, the pioneer missionary to China in the mid-19th century, the grandfather, if you like, of faith ministries like ours. I read that Hudson Taylor, in his bedroom in China, had 2 scrolls, one on either side of his bed, with Chinese characters. And on one side of the bed, the scroll said Ebenezer. And on the other side of the bed, the scroll said Jehovah Jireh. Ebenezer, up to this point, God has helped us. As I look back, I can see God has helped me. I have memorial stones in my life that are proof of the ways God has intervened. And as I look forward to the future, I can say with confidence, God will provide, because I sit in this place, in the middle of the past and the future. I look back at the past and I see these memorials to what God has done. And that means I can look forward to an uncertain future with confidence. Hudson Taylor lived like that, living a life of faith in China, believing that God had called him there, looking back at what God had done in the past and saying, I know that God will continue to do this in the future because I have this faith story of what he's done in the past. So today, as I sit in this place, I feel like I'm still on top of that mountain, La Maroma. I can look back at the past and see very clearly. I can see as far as Rock of Gibraltar, 200 kilometres away. I can see the great provision that God has done. I can see the stories of what God has the ways God has helped me in the past. But as I look forward, it's cloudy. It's uncertain. There is fear. There is anxiety all around me. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what my life is going to look like. I don't know what our ministries will look like in the future. And so today, I'm reminded to build my Ebenezers, to go back to my Ebenezers, to go back to my stories from the past, to the proofs I have of what God has done for me in the past, and to build myself up, to feed my spirit by looking back at the past. And so as I think about this, I realise the responsibility that lies on me to feed myself, to hold on to what's happened in the past. I realise as a dad and as a leader the importance of passing this on to my children, to my next generation. I'm reminded of Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret things, the hidden things, belong to the Lord, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever, so that we can walk in all the ways of the Lord. There are hidden things that we do not know, and they belong to the Lord, but there are things that have been revealed that belong to us. They're now part of our story, part of our history, part of our heritage. They are our Ebenezer stones, our memorials, our evidence, our proof of God's goodness and his help. They belong to us, and they belong to our children forever, so that our children can also walk in all the ways of the Lord. And the way that our children will know these things is as we, mothers and fathers, leaders, pass them on to the next generation. So as I think about this today, in the midst of this crisis, I feel a fresh awakening to tell my stories to my children, to write them down, to not live in a place of fear, but to choose to live in a place of faith as I build myself up, looking back on what God has done in the past. So, where are your Ebenezers? Where are the places in the past where God helped you? Where are those memorials in your life? Think back to them. Remember them. Retell those stories. Relive them. And as we look forward to an uncertain future, even though our vision is limited, even though there is cloud and mist and we can't see far, we know that even though we have not been this way before, we can go forwards with a confidence because we know Ebenezer. Up to this point, God has helped us. So as we go forward in uncertain days, may God keep us. May God give us a memory where we can bring back to mind the things of God's goodness.